of the Good Friday Agreement, and at a time when the Stormont Assembly still isn't sitting, hasn't been sitting for many months now, when the DUP put a stop to power sharing because they were unhappy with the terms of Brexit. And, you know, a deal has just been passed around kind of Brexit and, you know, a deal that we hope can continue avoiding the need for a hard border on the island of Ireland, which is so critical to maintaining the stability of the Good Friday Agreement that was signed 25 years ago. So it's a hugely symbolic visit. I think it'd be very important to people on both sides of the border in Ireland. But I think also you've got to have realistic expectations for it. And that's what Tony Blair has been warning about in the last couple of days. He says it's a really important visit, but we shouldn't kind of expect magic from this. You know, it's not like Biden being there and putting pressure on the DUP is suddenly going to magically end up in, you know, in the DUP agreeing to go back to the table and resurrect Stormont. We don't think, anyway.
Yes, I think it's his great-grandfather, in terms of County Louth and Carlingford Castle, James Finnegan, and his great-great-great-grandfather in terms of County Mayo as well. The Blewitts of County Mayo, and certainly Joe Blewett, a third cousin of Mr Biden, saying there's a great buzz in the area ahead of the president's arrival. And the great-great-great-grandfather, Edward Blewett, sold 27,000 bricks to a cathedral where Mr Biden will be speaking on Friday in 1827, which helped him to afford to buy tickets for himself and his family to sail to America decades later in 1851. So some lovely family tales for him. But the bottom line, I suppose, for Northern Ireland, Ali, is a slight sense of disappointment. He was supposed to go and speak to the Northern Ireland Assembly. Stormont was supposed to be back up and running. It is not. You know, it's all been scaled back a bit, hasn't it?
Well, that's true to a degree, but then Stormont's not up and running for a very simple reason, which is the DUP won't play ball and go back into a power-sharing government. And frankly, the DUP have been on the wrong side of the argument for the last 25 years. They opposed the Good Friday Agreement. They voted for Brexit. Heaven knows only why, because what were they thinking? There would have to be a border somewhere. That border was either going to be on the island of Ireland or it was going to be in the Irish Sea. And it ended up being in the Irish Sea, and they felt like second-class citizens. So heaven knows what they were thinking when they voted for it. I mean, if you remember at the time, both Tony Blair and John Major went to Northern Ireland to point out this border issue back in 2016. So the DUP have got to come clean and explain what on earth they were thinking at the time. They had a chance to redeem themselves on this Windsor framework, where again they're bedding down. But the problem for the DUP, I think, is they run the risk of becoming increasingly irrelevant over time. You now have a situation where Sinn Féin, I mean, this was never expected, would be the largest party. You're going to have a Sinn Féin First Minister. You've got optically the DUP playing second fiddle, and the DUP is going to go into utter irrelevance unless it actually steps up and does what's right for the people of Northern Ireland, for all the people of Northern Ireland, which is get back into power sharing. Because the last thing we want, and this is why this thing that we're looking at now, 25 years, this historic landmark is so important, because no one wants to go back to 30 years of the Troubles where 3,600 people lost their lives, including in the Omagh bombing in 1998 when 29 people died, which is the bomb that went too far. No one wants that. So the DUP needs to step up. And Blair's right, and Sonia's mentioned it. Tony Blair's right. The US president cannot force people to do things. They can cajole. And if you remember back 25 years ago when the Good Friday Agreement was signed, Senator George Mitchell, who chaired the talks, almost acted like the midwife at the birth of this agreement. And you had big leaders at the time, David Trimble, John Hume, Adams, McGuinness, all of them. And that agreement gave each party just enough to live with. No one was completely happy, but that's what leadership is about. And at the moment, we're not seeing that same leadership from the DUP. It's time to step up.
OK, well, the DUP will be among those 5 main political parties to meet Joe Biden tomorrow. There will not be a formal group meeting, we are told. That's what the White House said this evening. A bilateral too with Rishi Sunak, and then the speech, obviously, at Ulster University. So lots more coverage of that tomorrow. Let's move on to what's happening now and for the next couple of days as well. Sonia, the junior doctors' strike, it comes after a bank holiday weekend as well, compounds, if you like, the difficulties, and we're hearing already coverage of the night shifts could be difficult, keeping patients safe amid these days of strikes.
Yeah, that's right. So this is a really significant strike. I think it's the longest consecutive strike that we've seen so far in the health service. 4 days. It comes after a 3-day bank holiday weekend, sandwiched in between 2 weekends. That's sort of 9 days of the NHS without kind of proper medical cover. And it really does seem, you know, we've talked about the sort of the standoff between the government and the unions in other areas of the health service, in other areas of the public sector, like with teachers. It really does seem to be a real sticking point here. So you've got the BMA asking for 35% pay rise. That's actually much higher than nurses. Their argument would be, well, junior doctors, it's highly skilled work, and our members just aren't paid enough. They've certainly seen a real terms decline in pay over the last 12 years. And then you've got the government on the other side saying, well, 35% is just ridiculous. You know, we need the BMA to come down in order to start talks. And I think a lot of people might be like, well, where's, you know, 35% might seem high, particularly when you consider the nurses are asking for 19%. But, you know, where's the government's counter offer? This is hugely disruptive for the NHS. There's going to be many operations, examples of elective care cancelled these few days. Lots of people are going to be really concerned about that. People who've waited months for operations now being told that they're going to have to wait even longer. And as the clinical director of the NHS, Stephen Powis, has said today, this is not going to, you know, this isn't disruption that's just going to last for 4 days or even just the 9 days of the 2 weekends on either side. You know, this is going to cause knock-on impacts to the NHS for weeks and weeks and weeks. So I think it's just more grim news, really, for patients. You know, obviously you've got NHS staff who are saying we can't be taking a real terms pay cut. We need to see pay restored to where it was. And, you know, it sort of feels like it's patients caught between the middle of this fight between the government and medical staff.
Well, the government, of course, says it's unaffordable. Take a look at the front page of the Eye. Possibly you get the small justification for that. More growth, more tax receipts, more Treasury funds for public services. It doesn't look like that's going to happen for the UK, which will be, the IMF said today, the worst performing of the G7 nations, Ali.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've always thought, Anna, that we were getting a little bit ahead of ourselves when the Office for Budget Responsibility is saying that by the end of the year, inflation is going to be down at 2.9%. I mean, I'm not holding my breath on that at all. It's still 10.4 at the moment. Interest rates are 4.25%. The Bank of England's got a serious job to do, which is get that inflation down. And it's remaining stubbornly high. Part of the reason for that is because we have a very tight labour market. There are skill shortages all over the place. Labour costs are going up. It's very difficult for employers to hire people at the moment. So this is not going to be an easy time at all. And in the meantime, you've got the NHS doctors. And by the way, I defer to no one in my respect for the NHS. My mother was an NHS doctor for 40 years, but 35% is just not realistic. The nurses started at 19. That was also not realistic at all. I understand why doctors want a decent pay rise. They're saying that they've had a 25% real terms pay cut in the last 15 years. Of course, inflation at 10.4%, of course they want a decent pay rise. But 35% is completely unaffordable. We've got over 2 trillion of public debt. We spent 400 billion on COVID. We just can't afford it. People have to realize that if they want that kind of pay, they're going to have to be cuts made elsewhere. Where are those cuts going to be made? Education sector, the teachers want pay rises. The defense sector, we've got a war going on in Eastern Europe. So where is this money going to come from? Unless you tax people even higher. And the top tax rate is now affecting people at 125 grand as well. So the taxes have also gone up. And when we wanted to also increase national insurance by 1.25%, everyone was having a hissy fit about it. So we've got to be realistic in this country. Do we want Scandinavian-style healthcare at American levels of taxation? You can't have both. We need to have a proper public discourse about what we want to pay for public services and also how we reform them. And credit to the Labour Party on this, by the way. At least Wes Streeting, the Shadow Health Secretary, is saying that there needs to be NHS reform. We spend loads of money on the NHS. It's not that we do not spend a fair proportion compared to other nations. We do, but we still have very poor outcomes. So it's not just about pay, it's also about public sector reform as well.
Yeah, I hear your passion. We've just got a lot to pack in. Apologies for cutting you off there. Stay tuned, both of you, or stay there, both of you. Stay tuned, you're at home. Lots more stuff to come, including new figures showing a mobile phone is stolen in London every 6 minutes. Back with that.
Сразу второй готов.
It's part of the Congo Basin rainforest, which is such an important ecosystem. It's known as the lungs of Africa.
We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. She doesn't really enjoy speaking to the press, and it wasn't clear right up until the last moment that she was going to sit down with me.
I might be just very naive, but I do believe that change is possible, otherwise we wouldn't be climate activists.
I'm confident for the last 30 years we have known how bad it is. I'm not here to apologize. I'm here to fight for the next step.
You can see just the piles and piles of stuff, these sofas and people's desks and children's books. And you can see inside this home here, people trying to sort out their home. It's just been devastating.
I think everything's at stake. The future of our planet, the future of the beauty around us, the future of you and me.
It's a government institute coming to Ukraine with a weapon.
So whichever time it took place, you are criminal. So we shall follow you up to your last day on earth. Yes, do. Na sijakubali hata leo. Sijakubali. Sijakubali, sijaidhini. Na huyo ni mdogo wangu. Sasa nikiwa hapa niulize mimi. Mimi kama Inspector Generali hakuna maandamano nimeruhusu, kwa sababu nimekueleza, unasema unatafuta server Koinange Street, unatafuta server Arambe Street, unatafuta server Juja Road, unatafuta server Kariobangi. Kwani usava jameni yako kila mahali? Sasa tukubaliane jameni, those are political disputes and should be resolved kisiasa. Mambo ya usalama hakuna kusungumuza. Ayo hatutakubali masungumuzo. Sitakubali masungumuzo. Whoever you are, get me right. Whoever you are, sitakubali masungumuzo. I have a duty, I have a mandate, and I will discharge that mandate to the best of my ability. For the time I am in this office, I will not sleep on the job. Sitakubali mali yaribiwe ya watu. Did you see our supermarket raided? Somebody lost 20 million. How much time do you require? Do you put? How much energy do you put to raise even 1 million? Some of us even you have never touched even 1 million. Sasa jameni, somebody was declared bankrupt within 1 day. kwa sababu ya maandamano ya kutafuta
a lot of cash. I built a great business with my family, built a fantastic business. Thank you very much, everybody. And we have to save our country. God bless you all. God bless you all.